over here is the largest one, and we can see in front of us the golden dome, right? The Dome of the Rock, which we'll be getting back to. The Jewish quarter over here. Most of the houses of the Jewish quarter are newer than other parts of the city because they were rebuilt in 1967 or post 1967, I should say. That's why part of our tour will be there. That's where you can find most of the archaeological sites that are in the layers underneath. The truth is, anywhere in Jerusalem you dig, you'll find archaeology, but not everywhere they had the opportunity to dig. So in the Jewish quarter, they were able to dig, and the Armenian quarter. So we're actually standing in the center between the four quarters. And every tour I start in Yerushalayim, I say you can visit many places in the world. You can meet many different guides, see different views, but there's no other place in the world you can use this book as your guiding book. This is the world's bestseller before Harry Potter came out, of course. This is the book that everybody read. And people who wanted to read these stories in the place that they happened came to the Holy Land, specifically to Yerushalayim. And one of the first stories is the story of the binding of Isaac, Akedat Yitzchak. That's the first time this land is mentioned in the Tanakh, chapter 22 in the book of Bereshit, of Genesis. And that's the story of I would say the bottom line of the story is when Abraham establishes the relationship with God. He's about to take the most important thing he has, his son, and sacrifice him. In the Jewish tradition, this is a test, the ultimate test of belief. And we go back to this story again and again and again. The connection to this land, the land of Moriah, which is mentioned, but also specifically to these days that we're at, the story of Rosh Hashanah. This is the portion of the Torah that we read on Rosh Hashanah. And we blow a shofar. We'll be discussing this also later, I guess. We blow a shofar to remind of this act of Abraham, who instead of sacrificing Isaac, sacrificed the ram. And in that place where that relationship was established, the beginning of monotheism, in the Jewish tradition, I mean, in the Bible, there's no GPS. So there's Google Earth, but there's no GPS. How do we know this is a place? That's where tradition comes in. And in the Jewish tradition, this spot over here, there's Mount of Olives in the background. You can see this ridge. The Golden Dome is standing on a separate mountain, separate hill. And in the Jewish tradition, that's the foundation stone where the world was founded from, also on Rosh Hashanah, the birthday of the world, of humankind. And eventually the first and second temple, as the stories in the Tanakh and the Bible say, the first temple, later on the second temple, are built in that spot, making this the holiest site in the world for Jews. And I would say that's the first layer that we're going to discuss. Coming into this, we have Christianity. This is the cradle of Christianity. When I guide Christians, I tell them, if you want to understand Christianity, you must understand Second Temple Judaism. That's the background. Just to point out, we can kind of see in the background here lots of churches on Mount of Olives. In the Christian tradition, that's where Jesus enters the city. That is based on a Jewish tradition of the Mashiach coming in. So Christianity sees itself fulfilling the traditions from what they call the Old Testament, right? Our Tanakh, the Jewish Tanakh. And also in Islam, Mount of Olives has a significant tradition to do with the end of times. So starting with here, we already get this taste of the different religions, faith. And, I was born here. Actually, you can see here, Hadassah Hospital. This is where I was born. And living here all my life, I sometimes tend to forget. I mean, meeting people helps me remember how important this city is, not just for me, but to billions of people around the world for thousands of years who have been dreaming about Yerushalayim. So I have the privilege of living here today with my family, my 3 children that were born here too. And my wife is American, but she made Aliyah. And I want to take you through to kind of see some of the more corners here in the old city. But I would also like to start, I spoke a bit about Rosh Hashanah, and say this is a different time today. but we always wish for a better future. And we take an apple and dip it in honey. And this is a good place to make wishes. And we actually wish for a happy, new, and sweet year, and especially in the situation we're in. So if you have apple with honey, dip it. If not, you can do it later or on Rosh Hashanah. But from this place, with this view, I'd like to wish all of us a Shana Tova, and we'll continue on. Excellent. Okay, so our first stop in the old city. Oh, whoops, skipped too much. Okay, so we're in the Jewish quarter, and over here you can see the street we're standing on. This is actually the street level in 1967, when the Israeli soldiers and later on archaeologists and everybody who comes in to the old city, they come into the Jewish quarter and discover it in ruins. But this is the level that they're standing on, except one of these buildings, this is one of the only buildings that survived. I'll zoom in. Whoever reads Hebrew can see this is the Beit Knesset Tzemach Tzedek of Chabad. Okay, this is the Chabad Synagogue in the old city, the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. That's one of the only buildings that were not destroyed. About 70 synagogues were destroyed. This one, it turned to be a pen, but the building itself survived. And if you look on the other buildings, all of these buildings around us are modern buildings. Different from other parts of the old city that you walk around. You see lots of pipes and water and electricity hanging out because those buildings are hundreds of years old. These buildings in the Jewish quarter were built only in the 70s, after the archaeologists got to excavate Jerusalem. So when we look down here, we see one of the most important discoveries that the archaeologists had, and this is the Cardo. Now, Cardo, for whoever is not familiar with the term, is a street that looks like this. This is the main street in every Roman city. The Romans had a design for the city of, a grid system of streets. And the Cardo is the main street going from south to north in every Roman city. And when they found the Cardo of Yerushalayim, of course, that's a very happy moment. And here, this is how you should imagine this street. Pillars on both sides, shops on the ends, and people walking through. The street that was found in Yerushalayim is 24 meters wide. And the question we always ask is, okay, we spoke about the Bible, first temple, second temple. When does Jerusalem get a Roman layout? And that brings us to here. This is actually the oldest map of Yerushalayim. It's called the Map of Madaba. This was found in Jordan on the floor of a church, and it describes the entire Holy Land, and specifically Jerusalem is 10 times bigger. And this is the section of Yerushalayim. You can see here in this map, this map is dated to the 6th century, so about 1500 years old, and it already shows us Yerushalayim with the Cardo and the church, which is the main building in this map in the center of the city, and Damascus Gate, that at that point was the most important gate, and the second Cardo, which is being excavated in recent years just by the Western Wall. And the question is what this map doesn't show. Okay, I call this a storytelling map. And it doesn't show 1/8 of the old city, the area in the east over here of the Temple Mount. This is where it should be. It ignores this, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is this guy. Famous Titus, the son of Vespasian, who's the emperor of Rome in the year 69. Titus at that point is the commander of the Roman army, who sits over here in the province called Judea. In the Jewish sources, he's known to be not such a great guy. This is Titus who destroys the temple in Yerushalayim, the year 70. We mark this on Tisha B'Av, 9th of Av. we mark the destruction of the temple, and this is the famous Titus's arch in Rome, where they depict the victory over the Jews by taking the most important Jewish symbol, the most famous Jewish symbol, the menorah. Yeah, I put this picture in. For a Jew to walk by this bridge, it's somewhat of a victory, or at least a different memory when you're in Rome. So this is an old picture. Okay, so the truth is, only if you pass by this bridge, by this gate, the Victory Arch in Rome, you get to see this picture and understand the message. And the question is, how do you send out a message that reaches everybody? How does an emperor at those days send out a message that reaches every corner of the empire to tell them about the victory over the Jews? I compare this to Twitter. What is the Twitter of the old world, of the ancient world? And the answer is money. You know, even in Hebrew, we still say when someone has a reputation, the word we use in Hebrew is monitin. And it comes from the word money, moneta. When a new emperor came out, everybody knew who's in charge because his face was on a coin. So everybody in the empire knows who's the emperor. This coin is a very famous Roman coin. The other side of this, I should have brought that, is the face of Vespasian. And in front of us, what we see is a palm tree, the dates that are a symbol of the land, and a young girl sitting here. And sometimes there's a Roman legionnaire over here. And if you can see his helmet is over here, a victory position. And if the picture isn't clear enough, they added a tweet over here in very short words, and it says Judea Capta. Judea, this is the land of Yehuda. Okay, the name of Jew, Yehudi, is someone who came from Yehuda. It works in Hebrew better. Yehudi mi Yehuda, Judea Capta. So everybody in Rome, in the Roman Empire, knows not to mess with Rome, basically. In other words, don't mess with Rome. Who doesn't get this message, by the way? The Jews. Okay, about 60-something years later, there's another Jewish rebellion. Okay, this is called the Berkoff Rebellion. We're talking about the years 132, 135, beginning of the 2nd century. And the Jews, some of the Berkoff coins are reminting the Roman coins, retweeting them, using sometimes the palm tree. In this case, it's Arbat Aminim, coming to Sukkot. And around it, they write the words for the redemption of Zion, or the freedom of Yerushalayim, Chirut Yerushalayim. In this coin, over here, you can see a picture of what we understand today is the temple. So 62 years after the destruction of the temple by Titus, the Jews are rebelling for the actually 3rd time, and their mission is Yerushalayim. And the person who really wants to figure this out, what's leading the Jews, is this guy. Again, if you visit Rome, he gets a very respected place. His name is Hadrian. Hadrian is one of the best emperors of Rome, if not the best one of the 5 enlightened ones. He builds the Great Wall in Britain. He sets the borders of the empire. In the Jewish perspective, he has a different view. They actually call him in the Talmud, and there's no one else with this title, Hadrian, may his bones be grinded. That's it is what it sounds like. It's bad. So Hadrian, may his bones be grinded. This is the name he receives in Jewish history because of what happened with the Berkoff Rebellion. He realizes that the Jews are fighting for Yerushalayim. And he does something that never happened before, and that is to get rid of Yerushalayim. He actually razes the city down to the ground. It's not enough to have a city in ruins. You need to pave on top of it something new. And this is the Twitter from him. This is his coin, where he establishes by plowing the borders of a new city, a Roman city, a colony. He even changes the name. So it's not only physically that he changes, he also changes the name, and spiritually from Yerushalayim and Judea to the colony of Ilia Capitolina. And the land, the name is changed from Judea to Palestine. This happens in the 2nd century. His idea, his aim by doing this was to disconnect the Jews from their land. If there's no Judea, there's no Jerusalem, and Jews are forbidden from coming into the city, hopefully, Adrian figures they'll eventually, integrate into the Roman Empire. So that was his aim, and that is how the Caldo actually came to be. And when this street is discovered in 1967, more than any other place, the city is built, but more than any other place, this symbolizes the idea that there's no Jews in Yerushalayim. And the situation actually continues for hundreds of years. We have, throughout Christian times, very few Jews, no real Jewish community. In the early Islamic period, there's some Jews in Yerushalayim, but really the first Jewish community is established only in the 13th century as a community. And here we'll get to this by going over kind of around the corner. Here, we're back in the Jewish quarter. And here. So we're standing in the Jewish quarter. This is the center of the Jewish quarter today. And down here is a small synagogue called Haramban. In the 13th century, there's a rabbi called Nachmanides. And he participates in a dispute over the Talmud. And because of that, he needs to leave Spain, run away, and he arrives at the time Muslim-controlled land of Judah, or Israel. If we go back to that. Okay, so this is, by the way, the ruins of the Jewish quarter in 1967. So Nachmanides establishes the Jewish community in Yerushalayim, and that's a Sephardi community. For many years, there's no Ashkenazi community, and that changes, and that's the story of the synagogue we're going to discuss right now. This is the Chulva synagogue. I'll just move again to the other screen just to give you a context. This synagogue over here is called HaChurva. Churva in Hebrew is the ruins. It's actually the newest building in the Jewish quarter today. It was opened up in 2010. They finished building this building, but until then, you can see the picture over here. It was this famous arch. Whoever visited the Jewish quarter in Yerushalayim saw only this arch, which was reestablished also after 1967 on top of the ruins of this synagogue. This synagogue was also known as the ruins, HaChurva, and was built in 1864. So obviously you understand there's something behind the name of this synagogue, why it's called the ruins. That's the story I'd like to say right now. So if I go up with the timeline, 13th century, Nachmanides establishes a Sephardi community in Yerushalayim, but there's no Ashkenazi presence in Yerushalayim. And this changes in the 17th century. A rabbi, unfortunately, I didn't find a picture of him online, called Rabbi Yehuda Chassid from Poland, travels around and convinces thousands of Jews to sell their property and move over to Israel, to the Holy Land. And they actually arrive here, and in the year 1700, that's when they arrive here in Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, very close after they arrive, dies. And there's a community in the old city, Ashkenazi Jews from Poland, who are left here with no real leadership. And they started to build their community. They started to build a synagogue, which was known Rabbi Yehuda Chassid Synagogue. But soon after, they were thrown out of the city by the workers, the Arab neighbors that were waiting for their money to be paid back. And basically, the Ashkenazi community was very short-lived at the time in Yerushalayim. Every Ashkenazi Jew, and it didn't matter if he was from, they're from Poland, if he came from Lithuania, Russia, whatever it would be anywhere in Europe, any Ashkenazi Jew was asked to pay the debt of Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. This goes on for over 140 years. No Ashkenazi Jews in Yerushalayim. Sephardi Jews at the time were dressed like this. This is called a kaftan, and you can see the stripes on it. It's very similar to the dress of the Ottoman in the Ottoman Empire, of the local Arab community. This is a picture, an image of a Sephardi Jew in the Ottoman Empire. We'll get back to these materials also later. But every Ashkenazi Jew who came was asked to pay the debt of these students of the Jews of Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, which nobody could actually afford. We do have evidence of Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, who tried to get into Yerushalayim over the years. Over the 1700s, you can see here Ashkenazi Jews dressed up as Sephardi Jews. They forgot a few things like a shtreimel on, but you can see they put the stripes. And until today, by the way, there's Ashkenazi Jews in Jerusalem. This is the local Chassidut in Yerushalayim. You know, we have Jews from different parts in Europe, but the local original Jerusalemites, some of them wear these stripes. I don't know if they all know it, but this is where it comes from. Going back to the story in the Ottoman Empire, where the Ashkenazi Jews and whoever was in Yerushalayim tried to look like they're kind of blend in. It didn't really work. The next period of the synagogue starts with the Vilna Gaon. Even though he's in Europe, he's actually born in 1720. Which is the year where the first synagogue is destroyed. His teachings based on Kabbalah are telling Jews it's time to move back to the Holy Land. And the Talmidim, the disciples of the Vilna Gaon, arrive here towards the end of the 18th century, 1700s, and many of them settle in Tzfat. As they were Ashkenazi, they were not allowed to settle in Yerushalayim, but some of them are very active in bringing Jews back to Yerushalayim. They're meeting with different leaders at the time in the Ottoman Empire, trying to convince different people, throwing in different names. One of these Talmidim, one of these students of the Vilna Gaon, is a rabbi called Avraham Shlomo Zalman Tzoref, Rashaz Tzoref. It's hard to remember the name, but this guy travels from one place to the other, uses the names of famous Jewish families at the time, like the Montefiore and the Rothschild family, and he tries to convince them to allow Jews to settle back in Yerushalayim. And he actually succeeds. Around 1830, they allow Jews to come back, Ashkenazi Jews to come back into the city. It's been over 100 years since the debt was made. And Baron Rothschild, the Rothschild family in Montefiore, that their name was used, did not know anything about it before. But they actually went with this, and they gave money in order to rebuild that synagogue in the old city. And eventually in 1864, this synagogue is built. Now, the full name of the synagogue, based on the story I just told you, is the Ashkenazi Courtyard in Jerusalem, Rabbi Yehuda Chassid's ruins, and Beit Jacob, Beit Yaakov, that's named after the James Rothschild. That's the full name of the synagogue. But everybody just called it the ruins. It's a synagogue that was rebuilt on top of the ruins of the Ashkenazi synagogue. And in 1864, when this synagogue is built, it actually becomes a symbol. It's a symbol of Jews returning back to Jerusalem, again, after a period that there were no Jews here. And it's the tallest building at the time the Jews had since the temple. People who visited the synagogue and had a seat there. One of them is Rav Kook. Rav Kook was the first chief rabbi, Ashkenazi rabbi of Israel in modern times. Zev Jabotinsky, one of the Zionist visionaries, came over here to this synagogue to hang up the flag of the Jewish Brigade, a Jewish armed force that takes part in the British Army. But since Bar Kokhba, there were there's no Jewish fighting force, and the building itself, the biggest, tallest, nicest building Jews had since the temple. All of these things kind of come together, and this really becomes a symbol in the middle of the Jewish quarter. Now, understanding this symbol, we realize Why in 1948, among almost 70 other synagogues, the synagogue is destroyed, and the Jordanian commander that does this, his name is Abdallah Tal, and he actually writes in his diary, for the first time in 1,000 years, the holy city of Jerusalem is pure. There's no Jews in it, and they have nowhere to return. And that's why this arch becomes a very famous symbol after 1967 of Jews coming back to the old city of Jerusalem. We'll visit the Western Wall soon, but the Chorva synagogue in the Jewish quarter is a symbol on top of that ruins. And for years, this arch stood like this, standing as a symbol. They started to build it, but they haven't finished. And in 2010, they actually inaugurated, and you can see here the two pictures, one next to the other, the new Chorva synagogue, which is still called the Chorva, the ruins, looking almost exactly as the synagogue that stood here in 1864. The person who spoke here in the opening of the new synagogue in May 2010 was then the chairman of the Knesset. His name is Rubi Rivlin. He is today the president of Israel. And he gives a speech, which he starts with very high, archaic Hebrew, very high language. And he says, I remember standing here 9 years ago, there were piles of stones on both sides and ruins, and now there's a beautiful temple standing above. And he pauses after a few minutes and says, these are not my words. These are the words of my great-grandfather, Rabbi Yusha Rivlin, who was one of the Vilna Gaon's Talmidim, those who came here and built up Jerusalem. And he speaks here in the eve of Rosh Hashanah 1864, when they're opening up this synagogue. So Rubi Rivlin used basically the speech of his great-grandfather when they reopened the synagogue in 2010. And he says in his speech then that this place becomes a symbol of the relationship, the connection the Jews have to the city. It's been destroyed and rebuilt, and destroyed and rebuilt, and destroyed and rebuilt, and if we need, we'll do it again and again and again. And I added here some pictures I took from the inner part of the synagogue, which they really did beautifully. If you ever come to Jerusalem, I recommend visiting the synagogue, even if it's not on a tour. Sometimes it's open for, 3 times a day, the synagogue is used for prayers. They did the bima. They actually even did the paintings on the corners like they were in the original synagogue. They put the 4 holy cities. You can see Tiberia. That's one of the traditional 4 holy cities. We have Yerushalayim, Hebron, the cave of Machpelah. And interesting enough, they added Rachel's tomb instead of Tzfat. Maybe because they left Tzfat, I don't know. But these are on the 4 corners of the building. The Aron Kodesh, where they keep the Torah, it's really tall. This is the wall of the original synagogue that they kept as part of when they rebuilt the synagogue. There's a beautiful balcony inside that you can take a view. So they did this compared to the pictures that they had of the synagogue from before 1948, before it was blown up. So they really built it very similar to what it was. And over here, you can see the bima also, and the entrance to the synagogue with this actually a visualization of Psalms on the rivers of Babylon, where we sat and we wept as we remembered Zion. And the words, if I forget Jerusalem, that's what they depicted here. And this was also in the original synagogue that was rebuilt in 1864. So we're here in the middle of the Jewish quarter. And of course, on a regular day, this area would be packed with people. And we can actually pause now if there's any questions. If anybody would like to ask or comment. Anybody, if you have any questions, you can send them in. We'll continue. The next place I chose to visit is the roof of Yeshiva Esh HaTorah. It's one of the special views in Yerushalayim. you get to see the western wall over here and a close-up of the Golden Dome. It's not really how it looks today. And that is here. This is a short video I found of how they divided it up now for Corona. Here. So basically they have these capsules, people come in and you're given a number. You can see there's numbers on different areas and that's where you can, yeah, so we'll move on. And okay, so this is a short video that I made of other parts of the old city. Again, I'm not a photographer or a video editor, but I hope this is enough. Some hidden gems.
We're here to explore the old city. We're going to check out all kinds of interesting people here in the old city. I just don't want to fall down, so I'll look down where I'm going. Come with me, stuff. Well, this time is pretty strange here in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, the stores that are based on tourists are not open. So we're walking here in pretty empty streets. We can almost hear our own echo just going here. Okay, so I'm actually in the Christian quarter near the Muezzin. That's a Muslim call for prayer. And one of the most special and unique stores that I love to stop at is this textile store of Bilal. Let's go in and see if he's here. Bilal, he's here. Shalom. And Bilal will tell us his story.
My name is Bilal. I'm third generation of Arabic. Born in Damascus, which is Damascus. I'll show you some of the Syrian.
If you can see the colors he's wearing also.
All traditional for ladies. What I wear, that's for men. It's called Barda.
Sorry.
And the Arab and the Jewish Palestine and the Jewish Orthodox, they use that type, which is this kind of felt. And this one is just kosher.
Sorry, I apologize for the volume. Next part will be better.
The special things in Syria of Palestine. They do the part fabric, which is for the gold.
That's real gold, right? It's red with real gold.
That's pure silk and do more with real gold.
Wow.
Or carat gold. That's called mosaico design. This is the serif design. It's called Arabesque.
Wow.
And this is Salah.
See how beautiful this is designed. How many strings in this?
The loom of that it's 10 meters to take a 40 days work, 30 meters the loom, 8 colors the design, and 1,000 thread the wood of the fabric.
Wow. And who are your shoppers? Who comes here to shop?
I am famous for store where you can accept all the customers, but specialized. I am famous because I'm selling the big rabbis of Israel. His name is Yosef. And also the Pope Benedict. He was at 2000 in Israel and he has the investments from my school.
Wow. Bilal, thank you very much. We're all waiting for tourists to come.
We hope that Jerusalem open for all the people and safe and healthy.
And this is definitely a stop to stop by. Not just the luxury stuff, which is definitely beautiful, but also really all your needs. And from the best person, Bilal, toda rabba. Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
So I just don't know if you picked this up. He sells materials to Jews, Christian, Muslim. He's a Muslim in the Christian quarter. And it's actually one of my favorite stops in the old city, where you get to see, really travel around the world through textile and see the variety we have here. And he has very unique stuff. The next station I chose to go.
So I'm standing here in the old city and going to check out one more special place. Behind the regular, ordinary makolet, a small store, lays a family factory. This is Jabarini. And this is a family business of over 250 years. Hiding in the back room is the factory. This is all it is. With, you can see over here, grinding stone made from basalt. They make their tahini from sesame. The whole process is made over here in this room. We have over here the oven. And you can see the sesame, the different stages of the making.
الحين هذول نحن ميسرين شامل من الحين هذول نشو خلنا الحين هذول يشتو محلات سلا خورم شعول هذيك بعيوت شلا حزات وخلنا زي يومين شلوش زي عباله ماماش نسيون على فيها نشيم يعني حد ما نشيم شاري بروح الشام دول يخلوا رفاه بغلال أبيدو شيء في بين رفاه بين شعبيدا أنا تروفوت أنا عبرت الشام بروح الشام 50 بالشبع شنين أنا تروفوت لو متعسك بغلال شايش لي بعيوت كما قالون شعور حزات بيقول فرقت حين دوما يومين شلون زي عباد واحد
So this might be a cure for corona. I don't know.
However small this store is, a pretty interesting story and really a trip around the world, you can see, with spices. So spices, there's so much to say about, but over here to see how they mix the spices, the precious spices that they get. And people come here, just tell them what you want to eat, and they'll fit the right spice to you. They'll make the right mix. This store is over more than 400 years old. This family is in the business of spices. What they make, they understand everything. And they bring here all the countries from around the world with their different flavors and tastes, special fitting for people who come and ask. This is like a pharmacy of the old city.
You can also ask whatever you want, something like treatment things from herbs. Like, for example, diabetes, constipation, lose weight, anything. Whatever you need, like treatment from herbs, you will find here also.
I came here asking for a spice for vegetables in the oven, which wouldn't be too spicy. To see the work which is done here, it makes it a few minutes, and the flavors are something you can't get any other way.
Yes.
And I'll add one more interesting story about the name of the family, Wakit family. This is the family that had the clock in the market.
Exactly.
And Wakit is what time it is, right? What is the time? 5 times a day the Muslim pray, and people would stop by the store and ask, what time is it? Is it time for prayer yet? And this is where the family got their name, the Wakit.
Our grandfather, they were do it. They asked our grandfather, what time is it? It's time to pray. They told him, it's time or not?
Market is starting to open up a little bit.
So slowly, more and more people are coming towards the middle of the day. But it's local, it's not tourists. This is the 5th station of the Via Dolorosa. On a regular day, super busy. You can see stores that are really based on tourism are all closed. This is station number 6, in the middle of or walking up the hill.
We're walking up the Via Dolorosa, and you know there's one of the important stops on the Via Dolorosa, not one of the 14 stations, traditional stations, but definitely one of my stations in the old city, is Nader's coffee place, where we are going to drink the most important drink of the Arab culture, Turkish Arab coffee, different names to it. At the end of the day, good coffee.
So coffee is the, as I said, important drink for hosting. In the Arab culture, that's not the tea that you would pick in your garden. This is an expensive coffee that was carried from Ethiopia, from India, from far away, and grinding and the whole preparation of the coffee is a ceremony, and that's a drink that was offered to visitors, to guests in the Arab world. And until today, you see in the markets people locals sitting in the coffee places, drinking the coffee very slowly. It's different from, it's not a drip or espresso. You boil the coffee, so it's very thinly grinded and boiled, so it's stronger flavors. You drink it slowly with a cup of water next to it, and smoking nargila, shisha, hookahs. This is part of the Arab culture until today. So some of these places are open. I don't know how safe it is with Corona to share these things, but some of them are still open.
Pleasure to have you, and we wish everything will be good for all the world. And we ask them, God bless them, and we hope to see them again.
One of the most important places in Jerusalem, or the holiest Christian site in the old city of Jerusalem, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Let's walk and see, because it's really unusual these days. See how this a place which usually is packed with visitors, pilgrims from all over the world who come here to visit the holy sites. Let's walk inside, see what's going on now.
So there are days during the pandemic that this was not even open. The church was closed. Now on a regular basis, there's just the local priests. So just to point out, this is where the line usually started and goes all around the tomb. This is the tomb, the center of the church. It usually has a huge line to go in. Now there's really no one there. Very unusual. And the last place we're visiting in the old city is also a nice spot, the roof of the Hashimi.
Hey, really nice spot here. Great shade, great places to sit. You come up with a drink to the roof of the Hashimi Hotel and come follow me, see what views you get to see from here. Pretty nice overlook of the old city. We really get to see the entire Muslim quarter underneath us. The main part of the old city, you can see Mount of Olives in the background, the Austrian Hospice, and in front of us the ridge of Mount of Olives with the churches and different.
Okay, so we basically went over this view. It's just another angle. And the next place we're heading over to is actually outside.
Buildings on it.
Sorry. Okay, we're heading out of the old city and to the newer part of Yerushalayim, the new part of the city, and the famous shuk, Machane Yehuda, the Jewish market. First of all, I apologize for the videos and the quality. That's not my I learned history and other things, not video filmmaking. So I apologize for that. By the way, we can also pause here for a few moments if there's any questions that come up. You can send them on the chat too. If anybody wants to say something, this is an opportunity to unmute yourselves and share. Okay, so we're heading over to the Shuk. So we were in the old city, which is marked here with the red circle, the walls you can see over here, and back to Jaffa Gate, and we're going to head down Jaffa Road. So Jaffa Gate, so the gates of the city, as I was saying before, are where a lot of where people came in. That's also where all the trade took place. Yeah, it's where all the trade took place, the market days, and everything. Let's do this here. You can see a watermelon market just outside Jaffa Gate. And as the city is developing at the beginning of the 20th century, we have the city developing. The Jewish neighborhoods, mostly in green here, are opening up towards west, and that along Jaffa Road. And you can see Jaffa Road over time, that's actually changed. And here, Jaffa Gate is just over here. You can see some changes over time. This is Jaffa Road today. It's actually one of the first roads to be paved in the land of Israel, and also the first light rail in Israel is down Jaffa Road. And buildings here along the road, you can see some of them from the Ottoman period, some from the British Mandate. So from 150 years ago, the buildings are along this road. And as the buildings and the neighborhoods were built, the villagers, mostly Arab from west of Jerusalem, instead of heading over to the old city, to the markets there, would just stop on the side of the road next to the neighborhoods and start trading there, start selling their stuff. And the Jews wouldn't go back to the markets in the old city if they have it over here. And that's how basically the Shuk starts to develop. So you can see here the names of the different neighborhoods. This area is called the Nachlaot. It's plural of Nachalat this, Nachalat that one. And they mix together and basically form the center of town, downtown Jerusalem of today. So you can see this is Jaffa Road, and this is the Shuk, Machane Yehuda, along Machane Yehuda Street, which is actually Machane Yehuda neighborhood that was built along Jaffa Road. And as they were built, they come together and form the center of Yerushalayim. This is how it looks today from above. Just small alleys between these, maximum 3 floors buildings. The modern ones might be a bit higher, but this is a very interesting area. It has also older Jews. In the 50s, many Jews who came from different countries, from Morocco and North Africa and from Europe, Hungary and Iraq, Kurdistan, Persia, Yemen, all these Jews meet over here. And eventually they move out of the city, and this kind of becomes more rundown. Today, it's also a very hip area for students, hipster like graffiti. So this is Nachlaot, a very interesting mix. This is one of my favorite pictures that I took of the Shuk a few years ago. I used to live just above it. You see the pictures are from my apartment or my friends. If you look at this picture, you can unmute yourself, but tell me what you see in this picture. Tell me what are some of the, just no interpretation, just what we see, things that stand out.
I see a mixture of ages and representations of populations. It's everyone coming together.
Yeah, so you see different ages. What else?
Everybody's enjoying the music.
It's a very lively place, right? There's lots of live music and all kinds of things happening in the street. I also like to point out what they have or don't have on their heads and the size of what they have or don't have covering their heads. Different levels, grades of religiosity. I think that's the word. And traditional in the old city. What else here? I like this man over here. an older Jew works in the shuk. You have younger guys working this stand, students, really this mix of what the shuk is. And here, this is a street party, of course, not anymore. But really, this is how it looks typically without the big festive things, but on a Friday afternoon, the rush before Shabbat, if you've ever been, this is a bit of that. And I took some pictures of the people. It's more the stories of the people behind. This is the Moreno family. They're very known for their stand is for all different nuts. They're actually across the road from the Amedi family, who are also selling nuts. That's something we find in the market. It's a very traditional market. And how do you know where to go to? And you'll see in their signs, nobody says we have the best nuts in the market, right? It's a family name. People shop here by tradition. This is where my father bought. This is where my grandfather used to buy. This is where I'll buy, right? I like this family's stuff. Yeah, so fresh produce. This is the market it still is like this. You still have these stands, but until about 15 years ago, this was mainly what the market was. Fruit, vegetable, fresh produce, and the prices drop based on demand. If you come at the end of the day, these pitot are sold for a few shekels, right? You can buy a bunch of pita because there's nothing to do with fresh bread of yesterday. They make every day. Israelis are very used to buy, at least here in the shuk, to buy fresh bread every day, fresh pita, different types of pita. So very colorful, right? How do you buy this guy's peppers or the stand next to him? Depends on your family, where your tradition is. And it's a very seasonal market, not only in the fruit and vegetable, but also with the time of the year. So coming up to Sukkot, you can expect to find in the market all your needs for Sukkot. Right, just before Rosh Hashanah, they're selling everything for Rosh Hashanah. And here, 2 months before, I can already tell you that Hanukkah is around the corner when they start making the sufganiyot, the donuts. So here are more traditional ones, but today it's here with the jam inside, but it's taken a whole other step today with all different types of crazy sufganiyot and donuts that could be found in the market. Garlic. Do you know what holiday comes with garlic? Passover. Before Pesach, I don't know why, that's the season of garlic, but the whole area just smells of fresh garlic. And people buy kilos of fresh garlic, weave them back home, and hang them everywhere. So the whole city eventually smells of garlic in the weeks leading up to Pesach. That's my reminder every year that Pesach is coming. So that's about the food. And I also say the days of the week. On Sunday, some of these stands are not even open, because if they didn't pick anything fresh on Shabbat, there's nothing to sell. Monday, it's starting to wake up. Tuesday, fresh produce is coming in. And of course, Wednesday, people already have plans for Shabbat. Thursday is busy and Friday is hectic. And Shabbat, it's shut down. So the days of the week, also you can tell by that. And the shuk at night is also very different. It's really always changing. Famous falafel in Yerushalayim. There's other traditional dishes like hummus and falafel that you can see over here. But they also have sushi. The shuk has now, it's really going through different culinary changes. It's sushi with sabich or falafel with trina on top, wasabi trina. Okay, so lots of fusion and integrations of dishes. And I'm sharing with you now two of my favorites. Here, let's see if the video works. So, Jews have food which is, okay, this is called malawach. This is a Yemenite dish. Here, let's pause it. So basically, Jews have the concept of food which is overnight cooked overnight, and that's for Shabbat. You need to finish on Friday, so you have food on Shabbat day. It cooks overnight. So we have different names for it. It could be chunt or chulent or schena or chamin. Depends on where you came in the Jewish world from. Sephardi, Ashkenazi. Yemenites eat on Shabbat morning jachnun. Jachnun is this dough rolled up, and it sits the whole night. Very oily dough, and they dip it with traditionally tomato dip, grated tomatoes, spicy skuk, and cheese or something like that, and a hard-boiled egg. Another version of this is the malawach, which he just made now. That's flat, that's open, it's not rolled up. What these guys did is they took the traditional dish from Shabbat morning, it's called jachnun, and they made this into a jachnun bar, which is open until 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning when the young students are looking for what to eat. And this is how it looks. And it's one of the most delicious foods in the market. There's a layer here of tahina and hummus and some spicy and tomatoes and the fried onion and a hard-boiled egg and green onion and parsley, and it's good. Trust me. Another favorite dish of mine, again, I'm skipping a lot of the traditional dishes that you might have heard of. This is khachapuri. Khachapuri is from Georgia. Jews from Georgia, or in Georgia, it's a traditional food. Jews from Georgia brought this with them. The guy who opened this is actually a young guy. His name is Tengo, and he said nobody knows the Georgian food. This is what he eats at home. It's chacha and puri are bread and cheese. This is basically, there's 5 different versions of it, but this is the best one. And it's thick dough, which is baked with the Georgian cheese. It's salty cheese inside. They, at a certain point, open up an egg on it and continue baking it, but it's still runny. And when it comes out of the oven, they put a chunk of the butter on this. And it was tough, but I had to try it to show you, because there's a way to eat this. It's called a charuli. This is the tough part about my job. Okay, so yeah, so a bit about the food scene in Yerushalayim. There's actually a restaurant called Machane Yehuda. You need to book months in advance if you want to get a seat there. But they basically took this idea of flavors from the market, and they've opened about 7, it's a bunch of chefs. They have 7 places in the market, but they have also in London and Paris. They have restaurant Paloma in London, I think won a gold medal. In Paris, the Golden Sabra, which is the best foreign restaurant. And what they do is they bring some of these simple flavors from the shuk, which is the biggest Jewish market in the world. And as Jews, food is part of our identity, right? Every holiday, every part of our life. They try to kill us, they failed, let's eat. So food is a big part of Jewish culture, and Jews brought with them to Israel. And the market you really can travel the world through the food. Eat original or authentic Kurdish food. It could be kube, you could eat hummus, falafel, khachapuri, but you could also have herring and kugel, Ashkenazi, East European dishes, and they're all authentic. So this is what I like at the shuk. And here, let's move on to so the different people at the shuk. Of course, there's a birthright season, which is there too, the tourists there. So I say there's different types of people who come to the shuk. The people who come to do their shopping, those numbers have gone down. You have the people who are coming to do kind of I do my big shopping in the supermarket, but I come to buy special stuff at the market, more boutique shopping. I would be on that part. And then you have people who come to see other people do their shopping. That would be the different tourists and visitors who come. And at night, the shuk changes. It used to close about 15 years ago, 10 years ago. There was nothing in the market at night. Today, this is the most lively scene in Jerusalem, the nightlife in the shuk, where people stand on the stalls and dance, and there's parties. And also here, it's a very interesting mix of people. And another thing you can see in the shuk, actually when it's closed, now you can't even see it at night, are, thank you, Lance, are the graffitis. So the doors are covered with different graffitis. This guy is actually a Canadian guy, Solomon Souza. Solomon, his name is, and he started to do these graffitis on the doors of the shops, and people liked it. They asked him to do people that inspire them. This is a guy called Uri Malmilian. He was a famous soccer player in the Jerusalem team who came from a poor neighborhood, Mamila, just outside Jaffa Gate, that used to be on the border with Jordan and the garages and everything. So he was a success story. There's over 180 portraits in the market. Rav Gohen was the chief rabbi of the IDF in the Six-Day War, blowing the famous shofar blowing at the Western Wall in 1967. So that was an inspiration. You can see down here the artist's signature. Makona Nabebe, here, this is an interesting story. They even made a movie about him. A young guy from Ethiopia. He became an officer in the IDF and went back.
באתיופיה. אבא שלו נפטר כמה ימים לפני שהם צריכים לעלות, והם עולים לארץ, זה מקום חדש, תרבות חדשה. עכשיו אמא שלו אלמנה עם עוד 6 ילדים, והיום הם כל מיני טקסים. יאללה, קדימה לתת אש. היה חשוב לי מאוד לבוא לפה, להסתכל על המקום שנולדתי, שאף פעם לא חזרתי מה שעליתי. פה אני מרגיש אולי קצת גרוע לב, אבא שלי נמצא פה, יש פה אנשים שיקרים לליבי שנשארו פה. פה זה היה כל המקום שלי, כל ההיסטוריה שלי. ההתחלה שלי, יום לפני עלייה שאבא שלי נמצא, זה היה פה. המקום האמיתי שלי זה ארץ ישראל, זה העם שלי, זה המדינה שלי, בשבילה אני נלחם, בשבילה אני בצבא ובשבילה אני אמשיך להילחם.
So this was an inspiration when this came out, and they honored him. The people, the store owners, sometimes asked Solomon to do someone that they, that inspired them. Another one is the famous Cohen, Leonard Cohen. Okay, so he also made it there. And the story of this young girl from England, her name is Esther Tylingold, and she came here. She was born in 1925 in Poland, and she was actually born in England. Her parents moved from Poland, and she was a Zionist religious Jew, and she decided to move here. And in 1948, she's recruited to the Haganah, and she was a teacher in Evelina. It's a school in Jerusalem that still exists. And she insisted going into the Jewish quarter in 1948 to try and assist. There were about 2,000 Jews in the Jewish quarter in 1948 during the War of Independence, and eventually she was killed there. But she wrote letters. She used to go to movies. A very, very special young girl. And also her story was an inspiration. You can see the letter, and she wrote letters, everything, but she was writing this to this journal that came out for Jews outside of Israel, trying to give them the impression she had of the land, which when I read this, I thought this very much connects even to Jerusalem today, with the great vitality and energy that you meet when you come to Jerusalem. So these are some of the stories that are on the doors of the shuk. I'm just one moment. I'll just move to the next part. And Yeah, maybe. Okay, I'll start with a personal story, and then leave from there. So there's. Okay. Okay, so there's lots of different graffitis on the walls of the neighborhood, and many of them have to do with different conflicts or things that interest people in Yerushalayim. You can imagine the different topics. I can throw a few, but there's religion, okay, being religious, being secular in Jerusalem. That's or traditional. You have culture, LGBT. You have Jews and Arabs, and this is the story I actually wanted to go into. This is a letter I found in my father's stuff. My parents used to live in Tekoa in the West Bank, in a Jewish settlement, and this is from the 1980s. He got a letter, and when I found this in the old stuff, it says from Gaza. Okay, you can even see the name of the person sending this, Muhammad Aladin, a guy, and I asked my father, what's the story? Basically, he was driving down the road, and he saw a car that had a car accident. So he took this guy's father and put him in his car and drove over to Jerusalem and dropped him off in hospital. So Muhammad, I don't know if he spoke Hebrew or not, found someone, you can see it's the old typewriting machine, found someone, typed a letter, and sent a thank you letter to my father. This is way before there were any checkpoints or anything in this beginning of the 80s. The second Intifada broke out. Make a long story short, today the gap has grown, and the graffiti like this is actually part of telling us that. It says here in Hebrew, only a Hebrew speaker can understand me. And in Arabic, it says the same, only if you speak Arabic, if you speak Arabic, you can understand this. Talking about the gap of languages. This is in Arabic, but it's in West Jerusalem. Okay, not aimed for the Arabs. So actually, most Jews, I would say, won't even be able to read this. Atamni law kanat Yahudi. I wish I was born a Jew. Again, this is an Arab, I guess. I don't know. I actually don't know who's behind this graffiti. But he's saying in Arabic, I wish I was a Jew. No, a minority in a majority society. These are names of this actually one woman, Victoria, but it's written in 4 languages. And this is a graffiti against violence against women. Saying that actually does, people always say that would be, it's their problem. It would be the Ethiopians or the Russians or the Arabs or the Jews. Everybody would say it's not my issue, it's in a different society. But this is an organization that puts all these graffitis everywhere. It says, Zochrot, do you remember the names of these women? You can see here, Irina and Ilana, and Ghassan, Arabic, and so different names also. This is one of the things which is spoken. This also goes back to the language. When it says in Arabic, akel, and then it's translated. It's not a dictionary, okay? Someone who's trying to criticize this gap between languages. Most Jews won't be able to read this, but it just means the basic food. And a nice idea, it was done by this designer Liron, that actually Yifat knows her. She's Yifat's friend, and she realized that you can write in both languages the word shalom and salam in Arabic. It's called Aravrit, and there's this thing that in English, if you see the upper half of the words, you can actually understand what it says. In Hebrew, she saw that the lower part, and she checked, and in Arabic it's the upper part. So she made a combination of 638 combinations that basically allow us to write the same word. So a Hebrew speaker or an Arabic would read this and they would both read the same thing. This says Chaim or Hayat in Arabic, life. So this became popular. So you see also graffitis like this, like Shukran and Toda, language, all kind of interesting things. So that's a way to use graffiti to bridge over or to bring up different issues. I have a much longer lecture on this, but it's better to do it in a longer, when we have more time. And here, Jerusalem of everybody. And this is a story which also appears on the doors of the shuk of an Arab who saved, there were 5 American yeshiva boys who got stuck in Hebron. they took the wrong turn, and he actually went and they started violence in the street, and he just went and took them into his house. And later on, he was asked, why did you do that? He says, I just saw human beings, and he helped them. So this Arab saved 4 or 5 yeshiva boys into his house, and it inspired someone in the shuk, so they asked to put his picture on their store. So over 170 different pictures, 180 portraits in the market. You can usually see them on Shabbat when it's closed. And this is love, is medabik. How do you say medabik? Puts us together, or sticky. It's a sticky thing. Love is a sticky thing. I like to show another JNF project. We're almost at the end, by the way. So, and we'll connect this to the end. This is Ilanot in Yerushalayim.
It used to be a neglected schoolyard. None of our pupils used to go outside because it wasn't secure. And for us to see such a lovely yard, it's a dream which came true.
The greatest challenge was how to create a space, an environment that suits everybody, but is also custom made specifically to each and every child with his needs and with his abilities.
Everybody can go outside and use it for play, for learning, and for social interaction.
Seeing the kids today, this morning, first time in this outdoor space was very, very exciting.
It was a long prototyping process, and we're actually in the middle of a long learning process. This is a model that we would like to implement in other places.
It's a beautiful yard. I'm excited.
I want to thank the JNF for doing this effort and making it available for us and for all the school.
And I want to take this inspiration of a philanthropy and take you to one of the most important people in the history of Yerushalayim. And this is Sir Moses Montefiore. If I need to bring the last part of our tour today, one of the things that's happening these days in Yerushalayim is called the Slichot tour, or what we do every year, the month of Elul leading up to the New Year, to Rosh Hashanah, is actually a time that Jerusalem has more visitors in it at night than during the day. And Jews who come to say Slichot. Slichot are these prayers preparing for Rosh Hashanah, asking forgiveness before the New Year. And there's a whole tour, a concept built around this. And what we do is we like to take the sites that we visit on regular days, but also talk about them connected to where we are. And this is the story of Mishkenot Sha'ananim. This is actually the first neighborhood outside the walls of the old city. And the person behind this is this guy, Moses Montefiore. Again, the most influential Jew in the way Jerusalem looks in the last 200 years. Died at the age of 101, a banker, and a big philanthropist. And he was looking how to help Jews in Jerusalem. We're talking about the middle of the 1800s. It's an old city with sewage in the streets, large families, unemployment, illness and sickness. And he comes up with the idea, this is, by the way, the family symbol and the chariot. He would travel everywhere and help Jews around the world. 1840, the blood libel in Damascus and other places, met with different people, used the money and influence of his family, he's a sir, to help Jews. And he comes up with the idea of building the first neighborhood outside the walls of the old city. And you can see he builds a wall around it, and there's 2 rows of houses. Each one had 2 bedrooms and their own private kitchen and toilet. That was very new. There's a synagogue in it, and even builds a windmill to allow the Jews to gain their own income, to mill their own flour. And there's fresh air, and sounds great. And how many people come? Nobody. Sounds like a great program, a great plan, but nobody comes. He even offers this for half price. And yet nobody comes. He actually pays the first people to come there because people were so scared. And I take this idea, similar to the idea of a shofar. The shofar that we have on Rosh Hashanah. Montefiore is kind of a shofar. You know, why are people not coming out of the old city? Because they don't know what's waiting out there. And sometimes you need someone from outside to come and pull you out and show you what there is to do. Someone who can come over to your reality, to your daily life, and say, look, there's something out there that could achieve us better. The shofar, we say, always starts in a narrow place, but takes us out to a wider place. Not a specific sound. It could be anything that wakes us up in the middle of the night. This is when we say the slichot. But really, the words Ben Adam Alecha Nirdam are the words we open the Sephardi Slichot with. Wake up, not just from your physical sleep in the middle of the night, but from the sleep of life. And I like to take the story of Montefiore, of someone who came from outside, who was able to influence the people and really lead us to everything what Jerusalem is today, outside of the old city. And I won't see you before Rosh Hashanah, but let me at least play my shofar before. So I'll play it or sound it. That's a more accurate word. And see if I remember how. Yep. So this is for now what I have to say. I'd like to hear you. Maybe we have Lance or Ifat or Lawrence and Debbie, if you'd like to take over.
So everybody, we have a few more minutes for questions or comments. You can unmute yourself by clicking the mute button in the bottom left. So if anybody wants to be brave enough to ask a question or to say a comment, please do so. And then we'll wrap it up after people have had their chance.
Asaf, maybe if I can start. Our longing to be in Israel has been rejuvenated by you taking us there. It's really sad that we can't be with you in person. I see an empty bus behind you and look forward to filling that bus with many of us here today. But just curious about what it's like in Israel. Like we're going through COVID in maybe a very different way than you are in Israel. And I know the lockdown is coming. Tell us what it's like to be in Jerusalem during this period.
Yeah, so it's a good question because I think at the beginning a lot of people were very, we thought we got through it quite early at the beginning. There was a very serious lockdown. I'm talking about March, April. So Passover, right? Pesach, nobody went. People were sitting on their own. I'm saying my grandmother, she lives 15 minutes away from us. My grandmother is 86. We see her every Friday night. She eats by us or we eat by her. And she did the Seder night on her own. And I think at the beginning people were getting this and saying, you know what, it's fine as long as we get over this. And then people feel they opened things too fast. And now we're getting to a situation that we're getting into a second lockdown. which also again is controversial. Many things here are involved in politics, right? So depends who's the prime minister and what's your stand towards what he does in other things to how he's dealing with COVID. I mean, people are saying if this is emergency, why start it only on Rosh Hashanah? Why didn't we start this 10 days ago? You can still go to synagogues, but they ask people not to have too many people in synagogue. I don't see anybody going around on Yom Kippur and giving out tickets to too many people in the synagogue. So basically, would be based on people, if people take this serious. People are obligated to go with masks in the street. So we carry these masks everywhere. And at the beginning, I think people took it less seriously. Now people are starting to take it more seriously because they're realizing the numbers are growing. But until now, at least, things were going kind of normal. For people who are not affected by this, when school came back now, so the numbers have gone up. That's basically where we are. We opened the school year, numbers have gone up, weddings, everything. Suddenly they opened up the people are claiming it was just open too fast. And now Rosh Hashanah, we're not going to my parents again. We were supposed to go to them, and they said they're actually starting the lockdown on Rosh Hashanah Eve, but in the afternoon. They're saying people can do their shopping. If you drive over to your parents, you'll be stuck there for the next 3 weeks. So yeah, we decided to stay home, and within 500 meters of our house, we have parks, so we do hang out in the open air. But yeah, no schools. Kindergartens are also closed down now, starting from today. So I don't know. That's it's a very strange time because the tourists are not here, but slowly Israelis started to discover. No one was flying anywhere, so Israelis started to travel. And then people will say a lot of politics are involved, but I really don't know where this is going to right now.
We have time for one, maybe two more questions.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, really enjoyed your lecture. Thank you very much. It was fantastic and gave us a great feeling as if we were in Jerusalem. But did you find that we saw a lot of the empty stores that you showed us in the old city? Did you find that Israelis were coming, if there were not tourists from outside of Israel, did you find that some Israelis are taking the opportunity to visit Jerusalem without the big crowds, international? Did hotels offer discounts over the summer?
So yeah, there is an aspect of local tourism, but it doesn't compare. People lost their jobs. I mean, there's over 1 million unemployed in Israel today out of 9 million, right? So the unemployment rate is high. We had a very different summer vacation than we usually do. We stayed by my wife's sister in Haifa, and we traveled locally. And I think that's what a lot of my friends did and what a lot of people did. There are people, Israelis, who are going to hotels. Some of them offer discounts. They try to keep things open, but the tourism industry is actually the one that's suffering. I'm saying this also in a personal place. It went from 100 to 0. People who are used to working with incoming tourism, the last 2 years were peaks, and now there's nothing. It's really on zero. The government is helping. They are offering different programs. It took some time to start, but right now I think they're in a place that they are helping. So just waiting to see. The Israelis are not a big enough market to hold this.
Shana Tova, thank you.
Shana Tova, thank you.
So before we wrap things up, I just want to share a little Rosh Hashanah inspiration with everybody. I want to tell you a story that I know about Jerusalem. And I want to go back 3,000 years plus. And there's two brothers who live on either side of a mountain. And one brother has 8 children and a wife and a very, very busy, hectic life. And the other brother lives on his own. He's a single guy. And then one night, a brother is thinking about his sibling and says, he's all by himself. He has nobody to help him. I'm going to bring a couple sheaves of wheat from my stock. I'm going to drop it at his place quietly so he has what to eat. And that very same night, The other brother said, my brother's to feed 8 children. How is he possibly going to do this? I'm going to take some of the sheaves of my own wheat. I'm going to take it to his place. I'm going to drop it for him. And during the course of that night, they both climbed up the mountain. They crossed each other quietly in the dead of the night and didn't see each other. They dropped off the food for each other. And when they got home, they realized, I have the same amount of food as I started with. This is odd. And this goes on for night after night after night. And after a week, at the top of the mountain, both of the brothers actually bump into each other, carrying the sheaves of wheat. And they realize what exactly was transpiring for the past week. And they grabbed each other in brotherly love. And they hugged and they kissed and they cried at the top of that mountain. And that was the place that we saw at the very beginning of this tour. This is Mount Moriah. This is the Temple Mount. This is Harabait. And this is where, in our Rosh Hashanah services, we're going to read about Abraham and the binding of Isaac. This is the place at our Yom Kippur service. We're going to read about the temple sacrifice. This is where the Holy Temple was placed. This is the heart of Judaism. And what is at the center of the heart of Judaism? Brotherly love. And that's ultimately who we are. We are people who love our family. And the people in Israel aren't just another country. They're our family. For us, this is personal. That's why JNF is so deeply invested in enriching and enhancing the lives of Israel's citizens. That's why those special needs kids that you saw at the end of the video, they're not our children, but they are. And that's why we're going to ensure that those people who are vulnerable don't get left behind. And so that's ultimately the message of Judaism. That's ultimately the message of Rosh Hashanah. That's ultimately the message of the Torah. And that's what JNF, that's the pillar of our values. It's about love, love for one another, love for our family. And I really do want to take this moment to wish you, on behalf of JNF, a beautiful Rosh Hashanah filled with health, happiness, blessings, and prosperity.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lance. Maybe I'll just sum up what we did. We started in the old city. Arriving to Israel, we went from Jaffa Gate, visited the Jewish quarter, the highlights over there, which are a must on every tour. I tried showing you a few hidden gems, some of my favorite places in the other parts of the old city. Most people don't always get to,
That's fine.
but I love. And then we went to the Shuk, which is my, I don't know if my first or second favorite place in Yerushalayim, really the beating heart of Yerushalayim. There's so much more to see there. I wish we had a way of sharing so much more, but I really like to thank you guys for taking the time and joining.
And Asaf, maybe in 1 minute, give us a sneak preview of next Wednesday night.
Next Wednesday night.
Borders and security.
Next Wednesday night, I'll try and actually make my presentation a bit shorter to leave more place for questions after, because I'm sure there'll be. But the main focus will be geopolitical issues. Okay, so one of my focuses in studying and guiding is a lot of the geopolitical Middle Eastern stuff. So we'll start obviously from Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, a bit about the West Bank, and we'll head over to the other borders of Israel, and we can bring up current issues in the region. Hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions if there are. If you have in advance something you'd like to try and cover, you can try. So that's next week. We'll deal more with geopolitics, north and south, and other parts of the country. Okay, may you have a Shana Tova, a happy New Year, happy, sweet New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Asaf. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Deb. Shana Tova, everyone.
Shana Tova. Bye, guys.
Shana Tova, healthy and happy.